I'll remind you, it looks like this.
Oh, what's that?
We're working on the I want to see this on your desk. You can put everything else neatly underneath your desk. All you need is your note sheet right now. That's it. You got it.
Quiet, guys. Camera's still on.
Yes.
So,
All right, you guys. I'm gonna wait for everybody to be ready. A little review before we finish up the Cold War. So using the vocabulary that you used for the tic-tac-toe game, some words on the board. Satellite countries. I saw, observing from the tic-tac-toe game, satellite countries only refer to the countries in Eastern Europe. So Korea, Vietnam, they were not examples of satellite countries. All right. What was the Truman Doctrine? I don't remember seeing any Truman Doctrine sentences. What was the Truman Doctrine? Who remembers what the Truman Doctrine was? Take a look at your first Cold War notes. I see Kim has it out. Does it say Truman Doctrine? Can you read it out loud?
Declared a policy of
Containment. Truman Doctrine is containment. This is when containment became officially a policy. Who can give me an example of containment? The United States actively using that policy. Anu.
the North Korea tried to do South Korea, like on the 30th parallel.
Okay, good. 38th parallel, you're mixing up your parallels.
Oh. That would be a Oh.
38 is Korea.
Oh.
Sorry, Korea, but Vietnam,
18.
an example,
17.
17.
Oh.
Oh, you know what? I'm not going to require that you like remember that detail, like the parallels, but that is good. Vietnam is an example of us using containment. We're preventing the spread of communism. What else? What other theory is in place in regards to Vietnam? Fine.
Domino theory?
The domino theory. And what is the domino theory?
It's like if one Asian country falls, then they soon follow one way.
Good.
Going.
Good. If one falls, they will all fall. What event in the Cold War really scared us when the Soviets installed missiles 90 miles from the United States? Really freaked us out. Jade. Good. The Cuban Missile Crisis. And what is that an example of? What philosophy or theory? Remember?
Like, I don't know exactly, but like if they attack, then they both won't attack because they both have nuclear weapons, so then it'll be like the whole world
would destruct. Yeah. So yeah, that is the meaning. And who can follow up with the name of that? None. Deterrence theory. Good. The deterrence. It is not rational to press the button on that nuclear bomb. It's not a rational decision because you would self-destruct. The world would be in disarray. And there's another word that I introduced in regards to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Pushing somebody that far. When you're pushing somebody, AJ, do you remember? Brinkmanship. Good job. Good job. All right, Almighty, do you have another comment?
Question. You know how they didn't have a nuclear war? What did they do with all the remaining warheads?
All of the remaining warheads, the missiles, and
yeah.
I guess they're just stored somewhere. I mean, they didn't just blow them up for fun. I mean, before the atomic bomb, they did a couple of demonstrations to prove that the United States had this technology and this force. Okay. All right. So we left off discussing the space race last lecture. Why, when I go to a high school, maybe some of the older buildings, the older high schools, why do I refer to the Sputnik wing? What am I talking about when I talked about a high school and the Sputnik wing? Do you remember? Ben?
It's the math and science we added on because our students were too dumb to catch up with the Russians.
Good. Yeah, I call the math and science wings the Sputnik wings because what happened in the space race? What happened in the space race? Who won? Who lost? Please raise your hand.
Oh, October.
Kayla.
That's it.
Soviets won and US won.
Good. The Soviets beat us to space. Again, we freak out. We pour billions of dollars into the Department of Education and ensuring that there are robust math and science programs in the high schools and that our kids are doing math problems all the time. All the time, after school and drilling, okay? But even today, you'll hear stories about how American kids are lagging behind. Do you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Wait,
Is that true?
I think we're doing pretty good, honestly.
You're doing pretty well. Okay. You guys are doing pretty well. Alright. Alright, so the end of the Cold War. You're gonna start taking notes on your note sheet. The end of the Cold War. Number one. These are the causes of the end of the Cold War. This basically here. Let me set the scene. The Soviet Union is spiraling downward.
Wait, is it this one?
Who needs an extra note
Oh.
sheet?
I do.
The Soviet Union is spiraling downward. Things are not going well.
Oh.
Mostly they're dealing with economic problems. Their downfall is that their economy is suffering. They cannot produce enough for their people. Okay? And this is why they are spending so much money on their military. That is where the high proportion is going to military spending. Creating these missiles, participating in the arms race. Just to give you an idea, 25% of their national output went to military spending. 25%. That is incredibly high. Compared to the United States, at the time, the United States was spending 4 to 6% of our gross national income on military spending. And this is when the US really amped up spending. So the Soviets they're ignoring industrialization, providing support for the poor. They're putting it all into their military. Is that a wise decision?
Hard.
No. So it leads to economic problems. And another thing, remember when I talked about they were lagging behind in the Industrial Revolution? What plan did Stalin put in place to increase industrialization? Who remembers? I'll say? The 5-year plan. Good. The 5-year plan. It is not that effective. So even at the end of the Cold War, and just to give you an idea of chronology, this is the 1980s. They still are mostly an agricultural economy. Everybody else is, at this point, like they're making computers. And they are still an agricultural economy. Number 2, the leader who comes in, do you have a question, AJ? Fill out your pen. The leader who comes in at the end of the Cold War is Gorbachev, and he begins opening the doors. Opening the doors. What do I mean by opening the doors? Did he like literally open the doors? Jamal?
Letting in like trade.
Trade. Good. Letting in trade. And he does this with the satellite countries as well. So, the people living in the satellite countries for the first time, they see Western goods. And they want it, they want more. And for the first time they see this contrast of their communist life compared to what they have in the West. What does this lead to?
The fall of
You
the
get
Soviet
that like
Union.
taste. What does this lead to? Mauricio. Okay, this is the fall of communism. Yeah, they start, what do these people do? They want TV. They don't industrialize. What do you guys connect with rising nationalism?
Rising.
Revolutionize.
Revolution. Yeah, they start revolting. They want to kick the Soviets out. Why are you controlling us? We want those Western goods. So this leads to the rising nationalism leads to the downfall of communism. Number 3, like I said, economic inefficiency. They begin to move to a market economy. Again, you want to associate the market economy with that move towards capitalism. Okay. Do you remember when I showed you that spectrum of the USSR and then Russia today, and where they fall?
Wait.
Yes.
What's like? Alright, Soviet Union is all like little. Wait, what are they? So Russia, is it a country or is it like
After the fall of the Soviet Union, they go back to being
Russia?
Russia.
And so Russia's a country, right?
Yes. Yes. And today,
Thank you, sir.
today in that graphic I showed you, you can argue that they have more capitalistic tendencies than we do. Do you guys remember that? So they open their markets. All right. So there are 2 leaders you want to be aware of. 2 leaders at the end of the Cold War. The first one is the American leader, Ronald Reagan, President Reagan, and here are the most important information you want to know and his role in ending the Cold War. The first thing he did is he increased military spending significantly. I mean, like I said, they weren't spending as much as the Soviet Union, but he spent, here's the number, $2 trillion. I know!
This is why we're in debt.
That's a lot!
So in debt.
$2 trillion. This is called the arms race. When you just keep building more missiles and you're showing that you have all of this technology. Again, what theory does that go along with?
Ranking
Everyone. Deterrence, you know, having all this weaponry, you know we have it, why would you mess with us? So this is, he's in charge of the arms race, $2 trillion. Number 2, he is the first president to take this conflict, this war, and put it in very simple terms, saying this is a battle between good and evil. He says that the Soviet Union is evil. Others may have thought it, but he's the first president to make it sort of a moral crusade. We need to beat this evil empire. And I'll show you a clip of one of his famous speeches. Number 3, he expands NATO. So NATO becomes an even more powerful organization. They have more members. Everybody's basically on board, and they start pressuring the Soviet Union. Okay? It's sort of like we're all doing this. We all believe in democracy, free trade. So they start pressuring the Soviet Union. Does the NATO still exist today?
Yeah.
Yes. Does the Warsaw Pact still exist today?
No.
No, it doesn't. I mean, after the Cold War, all of those republics start achieving independence, and we'll study them next week. Yes.
NATO bombed Gaddafi's.
Yes, NATO, like I said in Libya last year, the United States had NATO sort of take the initiative in that intervention. Okay, so I'm going to play a clip of one of his most famous speeches. Are you guys familiar with this Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall? Anybody familiar with that? Okay. Here it is.
that would advance dramatically the cause of freedom and peace. General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
And the wall comes down.
It
The
does?
wall does come down. It comes down about a year after he makes this speech and after his presidency is over. But Ronald Reagan is credited with bringing the Cold War to an end. A lot of historians, some will argue he is one of the most important presidents because of his role in ending the Cold War.
Did he die during presidency?
No. There was an assassination attempt, but he lived. He served 2 terms. He was a 2-term president, and he died a couple years ago. He had Alzheimer's.
Muhammad Ali.
Okay. Number 2, the next important Cold War leader on the other side, it is Mikhail Gorbachev. Mikhail Gorbachev. He is, and you can write this in your notes, he is the final leader of the Soviet Union. He's the last leader because at the end of the Cold War, the Soviet Union no longer exists. They become Russia.
That's pretty good.
So he is responsible for the transfer from the Soviet Union to Russia. Yes?
Soviet Union transfers to Russia, is he still a leader?
He doesn't last much longer. And not because he's ousted or anything, but he puts it in motion. He makes it happen. He and Reagan make it happen. Does anybody know who succeeds Reagan?
Clinton.
And there's one in between. He was a 1-termer.
Oh.
Bush number 1.
Yay.
E.
Bush number 1. The end of the Cold War officially is in 1991 with Bush 1. Okay? Good.
What made it official?
So here are 2 policies you want to be aware of. Gorbachev's 2 policies that bring an end to the Cold War. The first one is called glasnost. It's one of your vocab terms. Glasnost refers to openness. It means openness. And specifically, it's about allowing more political freedoms, such as freedom of speech, freedom of press. Gorbachev realizes that Russia will never be a major player if they continue limiting freedom of expression and closing themselves off from trade. The second policy is perestroika. This refers to an economic reconstruction. So he's moving towards capitalism. He allows more market reforms. Perestroika. Why don't we all say that one together? Perestroika. I took a Soviet Union history class when I was in Ireland.
Oh.
And I just discovered this when I was preparing for my Cold War unit in HOA. I took a Soviet Union history class with one of the most renowned Soviet Union historians. And I feel like I did not take it seriously now that I know it's such a big deal. But this is when I was introduced to all these terms, so you guys are advanced. But perestroika, opening the doors again. From our knowledge of history, in the year 1500,
Renaissance.
this is right after,
Enlightenment.
what empires closed their doors?
Oh.
China.
Ottoman.
Ming.
Raise your hands, guys. The Ming. China and Japan. China and Japan. You guys, China. 1500. They're at the top of their game. They are creating impressive navigational tools, the compass. They're out there. They're exploring. And then they do what? Isolate. They turn inward at the top of their game, and what happens as a result?
They fall.
And lag behind.
They lag behind, and who comes in?
Europe.
Europe. And then we move into exploration, right? Move into exploration. And then that's the rise of the West. So Gorbachev realizes they need to be a player. They need to be trading. They need to have more openness. So those are the two policies that he institutes that brings the Cold War to a close. Oh, look at this. So I was reading the newspaper 2 days ago. Gorbachev, Nobel Prize winner in 1990. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for bringing an end to the Cold War. If you're a student in the Chicago Public Schools, you could have met this guy. He's visiting Chicago schools. Students were asking him questions about Glasnost and his role in the end of the Cold War. It's part of a program to bring Nobel Prize winners. But we gotta get him to Fairfax County.
Right?
Should I write a letter?
Yeah. A strong opinion letter.
Opinionated?
Yeah.
Mr. Gorbachev, come here. I guess he wants to interact with high school youth, so. You know, I keep getting these questions. How old is he?
He looks like he's gonna
He's an older man, but this is like late 80s. I mean, I was, you know,
Strong opinion.
I remember this happening. It's not that long ago.
She's probably.
It's not that long ago.
Oh, you are like.
Okay, this is the final event. This is the symbolic end of the Cold War. This is the symbolic end when the fall of the Berlin Wall. Okay? It falls in 1989. The wall that separated Western from Eastern Germany. They tear it down. I will show you footage. It's pretty cool. Of people crying and celebrating, you know, the thought that for 28 years, there was a wall separating them from their relatives. Like there were babies being born, people that they hadn't even met. They separating them.
Then
Was there like a
AJ?
wall around the outside also?
Of the
Could you just walk around?
that's what I was gonna say.
There was no, and again, you know, like you remember like when I was talking about the DMZ zone and Korea. I mean, do you feel like you can just like sneak over?
So you couldn't even leave Berlin at all?
You could not. If you were living in West Berlin, you would not be able to go to East Berlin.
Could you leave Berlin though?
Could you? Not in East Berlin. The Soviets had
in West Berlin?
in West Berlin. You could travel in Western Europe.
So you couldn't you just like take a plane out and then take a plane into Eastern?
No.
Nobody was allowed.
Just like in North Korea, are they letting outsiders in? I mean, this is the sort of communism they were practicing. They were very strict, Ben.
Actually, West Berliners could actually go into East Berlin. You could visit for the day, visit relatives, but then you'd have to get out.
Yeah, they wouldn't. I think they were very strict about who they allowed in and out. Okay, I knew.
Wait, my mom went to college like in 1985.
Okay.
In Moscow. I thought.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought most of them were like friends or.
Okay, in Cuba, this is still a communist country. They do not. They're very strict on allowing who can come in and out, right? So during in the 1980s, by the 1980s, the Cold War, it's thawing. they're allowing, there are less restrictions. So it's starting to thaw, so they're allowing for more interaction. But again, so the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, this is the symbolic end to the Cold War, okay? And I'll show you some footage of that.
The East German government finally gave in to the pressure.
They are celebrating.
You wanted to see what's